You are giving your names out.
You were Mike Steele?
For Hawker.
Oh, well, Hawker's
Mike,
different.
are you ready?
No, it's still a first violation.
Let's go.
We're all trained.
Oh, purple.
I said, are you ready? Let's go. Oh,
Martin, oh no, Martin.
What?
it's okay. I don't understand the math either. I know I finished.
Is no one watching right now?
Oh.
Is anyone on right now?
No.
It's not that, like.
I just
look,
started
scroll
it.
down. The articles don't.
You know,
talk.
maybe I'll go live.
I
on
like.
Instagram.
They have like a transcript available.
Should
So
I?
So let's look at the presentations of the day. The first one is
Are you gonna turn it around?
Okay, so our topic was airline overbooking with dynamic storage costs. Last minute cancellations and no-shows are prevalent in the aviation industry and can negatively impact airlines' overall economies and revenue. An example from the article was in 2005 at Lufthansa, 4.9 million passengers didn't show up for their flight. And to put that into perspective, they said that's 12,500 fully booked Boeing 747s. By overbooking, Lufthansa was able to carry more than 570,000 more passengers, and in turn, they saw a revenue increase. Overbooking is used as a revenue management technique as they're able to carry more passengers and it has more economic benefits. Overbooking models within commercial RM, they balance risk and the associated cost of the empty seats. And it also takes into account customers' willingness. Okay, moving on to overbooking as part of revenue management. There are four main research areas, which are overbooking, capacity control, pricing, and forecasting. Capacity control is also known as fare mix optimization, and the article kind of focuses on this for a bit. And it has to do with assigning capacity to the different fare classes. Okay, so no-shows are pretty self-explanatory. It's passengers who don't cancel their reservation and they don't show up for their flight. Go-shows, on the other hand, are passengers who have a ticket but they don't have a reservation. Overbooking limits are put into place to compensate for no-shows, but they don't compensate for either cancellations or go-shows. The actual approach for overbooking that's used at major airlines is similar to the model that's used in the article. And Lufthansa's approach to overbooking calculates the probability of overbooking level and then selects the overbooking level based on the minimization of spoilage costs. Okay, so this was a model that was shown in the article. P is probability of spoilage if they curtail the bookings. And C is the oversale costs. And then for this model, there were several assumptions that were put into place. And so the assumptions are all tickets at the same price. And then for network airlines, it's almost every passenger pays a different fare. For low cost, it's increased fare levels closer to flight departure. And then constant compensation costs per month passenger. And then an example of the variation between resentment levels towards airlines, where basically if you have a passenger who is denied boarding, like on the last flight home on Christmas Eve, they're probably going to be more frustrated than somebody who was denied boarding like in the middle of the week and there are plenty of people on the same.
All right, well, let's talk about the latter section of this paper then. It's the development of a model that takes into account passenger willingness to pay as opposed to the current overbooking models, which are static and do not take this into account, which is the whole point of the paper, right? So as we kind of discussed, airlines change their OBL, which overbooking level, several times during the overbooking period at a fixed optimization point called snapshot, right? And could be manual, could be automatic, as the system suggests. We'll talk about these changes because of capacity and survival rate, which is basically updated, new and updated no-show forecasts. change in denied boarding costs, and change in spoilage costs, right? Best estimate of time-dependent loss of contribution or spoilage costs is fair level of lowest open booking class, reflecting changes in passenger willingness to pay. So it's better, I guess, better understand all of these, what I just said. The paper goes into a macro diagram detailing 3 different sorts of overbooking models. The first one will go up here, assumes no overbooking at all. And then the next one goes into overbooking just one seat, constant overbooking of one seat, and then overbooking only in stage 3, so like right before departure. Going back here, we'll see like, the stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, $50, $100, $150. That assumes that willingness to pay will increase the closer we get to a flight, which sort of makes sense if you're desperate enough to buy a ticket that close to departure date. Either you're a business traveler, your company is paying for you, so you don't care how much the ticket costs, or just so desperately need to go that you are willing to pay. So this model assumes that each stage, the closer we get to a flight, the willingness to pay will increase. So again, just on the right there, that's the legend. P is a state probability. Our spoilage cost, you see, is the night boarding cost, which for the purposes of this model is stable at 150 euros, I believe this is. So this model assumes that we see like the 0.4 on the arrow going up. That's like a 0.48% chance of a ticket being booked, 60% chances of nothing happening, and it just gets closer and closer to the flight. And for this model, which is no overbooking at all, we get expected contribution. So basically, the revenue R is 49.2 euros. C, which is the denied boarding cost, is 0, which makes sense because there's no overbooking, so we don't need to pay any overbooking costs, right? And we want to keep this number in mind, 49.2. Let's compare our R value for if we incorporate an overbooking model. The first one we'll consider is a constant overbooking model, 1C. So you'll notice this booking counter, instead of just 1, there's 2, the overbooking, right? Still the same probabilities, 40% of us increasing, or someone buying a ticket, 60% of nothing happening. And I should mention that, forgot to mention, is 38.006 is the chance of no-show, basically. And in this model, restricted contribution is 82.8. So if we overbook, obviously we're going to get a larger revenue, which totally makes sense, right? But we introduce the C, as you can see here, the denied boarding cost, 29.7. So the net revenue is going to be about 53 euros, which is higher than 49.2. So even with this overbooking, this very static overbooking model, we still get more revenue. The last model is overbooking only in stage 3, where willingness to pay is the highest. And in this model, the same thing, by the way, same probabilities and everything. We get an expected revenue of 78, which is a little lower than the static overbooking model. But the overbooking cost is actually a little bit shorter, 21.6. So their net revenue, 56, is actually a little bit higher than just static overbooking. So I guess this simple idea of there being a time-dependent overbooking strategy makes more money than a static overbooking strategy. So they developed a sort of simulation to illustrate this. It was based on tons of data on 122 real departures, and based on all of these real departures, their simulation incorporated 12,200 departures, which contains lots of booking classes, snapshots, which again changes in time depending on the stuff we discussed about earlier, and the capacities from like 130 to 225. And they examined this based on different demand ratios, 0.76 to 0.98. And then they implemented again basically through overbooking model, which is the static WTPM, which is willingness to pay with minimizing cost strategy, and then WTP, maximizing revenue strategy. And we can see based on these two scopes, let's look at figure 4, number 4 first. Article talks mainly about willingness to pay marginal or minimizing costs. So put a star there. So this is a little bit confusing to me, and I tried my best to explain it to you guys. What minimizing costs, WTP minimizing cost means it's the expected revenue from selling an additional seat due to overbooking, based on the probability of it being able to fill a seat times the fare of the lowest open booking class. Figure 4, WTPMC, is relatively stable at 4%. And the article goes into the reason why it's stable. It goes for all departures. All departures means also a departure to low demand, low price for the lowest open booking fare, right? So it makes sense that it's sort of stable at 4%. But if we incorporate a sort of sold out flight model, so a figure 5, where the price of the lowest fare is going to increase, and it's going to act a little bit more as expected. The overbooking rate will increase the closer we get to a flight, which again makes sense. Didn't understand maximizing revenue too much, we'll cross over that. So yeah, I think I talked about most of this. Oh yeah, but the paper did mention that there was a slight limitation for the way they modeled willingness to pay, maximizing revenue. Sorry, that's what PMR means, maximizing revenue. There's some sort of feedback loop effect where a low class fare would get booked out, and the fare would increase because it gets booked out, right? The lowest fare would increase because it gets booked out. This means higher overbooking, which opens up more of the lower classes. But then this leads to lower booking, which opens up more of the lower classes, lower fares, I mean. So it increases some sort of unstable effect on the price. So this is something paper mentioned that could be an area of improvement. But based on all these simulations and everything, here's a really nice table that put together based on, like I said, the increase or different varying demand factors. And the paper does mention the most realistic one is in the middle, 0.87. And all of these numbers, there's no units for the numbers, something I dislike, but I'm assuming those are like euros for the revenue. But we can really easily see that if we incorporate any sort of overbooking strategy over there, we're going to make money. And the best is the willingness to pay, maximizing revenue overbooking strategy, about 1% increase. Static MF maximum fare, static average fare. What else? We can see that willingness to pay, maximizing revenue consistently perform the best. Revenue gain is about 0.6 to 1.4 over no overbooking at all. That number might seem, incremental gains of 0.1 to 0.15% of the willingness to pay MCMR model over static overbooking, which might seem small, 0.1 to 0.15%, but for these huge airlines, these huge legacies that lots of flight, lots of money made, it can still make in excess of 50 million euros. So there is a lot of benefit to incorporating not static, dynamic overbooking models. Here's the conclusion. Paper considers an overbooking model that incorporates time-dependent willingness to pay. Again, according to the paper at least, at the time the paper was written, most airlines still incorporated a sort of static overbooking model. And this paper basically examined the revenue potential based on the class of data that we talked about, right? And this paper found that dynamic overbooking models create consistent gains in expected net revenue when compared to static overbooking methods. So there is a lot of room for improvements for current airline overbooking models. A willingness to pay, maximizing revenue strategy showed the best performance throughout. You're right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure if you who did not read them, I assume you did most of it did not read the article. But if you read it, I appreciate that. This is actually a pretty good article, and I think the three charts here on the 3 slides, I think, explain the concept very, very nicely. It's not too difficult to explain in these studies. It's just some of the conditional probability here. So this very basic case here, so you only have 2 seats on this super small aircraft. You either sell the seat or you do not sell the seat. Or you either did not sell the seat or you sell the seat at different stages. That's how long stage 0, 1, 2, 3, and the basic function. And so start from the beginning. So here at the beginning, the probability is 1, expected revenue 0, you haven't sold the seat yet. Now from the beginning to stage 1, 2 things may happen. You sold the ticket, or you sold the seat, or you didn't sell the seat. If you didn't sell the seat, the probability here is 60%. B, 60%. Expected revenue 0, because you didn't sell the seat. 40% of the chance you sell the seat. So B, 44. Revenue 20. Why? Because it's expected revenue. So it's the fare airfare times the probability, 50 times 0.4 is 20. Because at this stage, expected revenue is 20, here is 0. Now, next step. So we assume this ticket survived from stage 1 to stage 2. Nothing happened, probability is 1. So you just copy 1. And there's another kind of possibility here is that if we did not sell the seat in the first stage, but now we sold the seat in the second stage. And once again, we'll have the 60-40 kind of split into the probability of not selling or selling the seat. If you sold the seat here, now the probability is 0.4, but on condition of the first step that you did not sell the seat. So this path here, from the beginning to here, the total probability is 0.6 times 0.4. Right, so you got 0.24, which is the probability of you sold the seat in this step. And this becomes 44. Why? Because you have 0.24 and airfare is 100. You do the math, 0.24 times 100, you got 24. 24 plus 20, the expected revenue at the step is 44. The accumulated probability becomes 0.64. So that's why it's 0.64. So once again, do additional math. So here, 0.4 times 0.36, you got a probability of 0.144. Right? 0.144. And then you have this kind of so 144 added 0.64, you roughly got 0.784. And expected revenue is you went use 0.144 times 150. And you add to 44, you got 65.6. So this is here. Now one more step. Last step, the seat survived, 75% chance. Booking was canceled, 25% chance. So if that happens, then you do the math again. Right? So this times 25, you got this probability here. And here, 0.75, 0.78 times 0.75, you got 0.59. And revenue was 49.2. So it's actually, we explained the whole process very nicely, but you see, it's actually not easy. We'll have to extremely simple case, only one seat, only 3 stages. You still have to use that many steps to explain the math. So it's in a relatively complex situation, you'll have to use math to describe that. So you can picture a scenario very well, but if you cannot master the language of math, you have to use words or chart to explain your way of thinking. You have taken a lot of pages. And so that's why math is important, because it's highly abstract, it's accurate, and it saves space. And I heard, my math is okay, not great. I heard from people who are much better than me is that when they think of math problem, they have very kind of detailed illustration in their mind. Right? They have a chart like this to help them understand the problem. But when they write, they use a very abstract formula to form their way of thinking. But their actual thinking process is still kind of very usual to a lot of people. Okay. So this step is the same thing. You just have like the extra, you have the overbooking at different stages. That's the only difference. Right? So this is overbooking. Right? They only have one seat now, remember? But you sold 2 tickets. So you just do the conditional probability. You just do the times, just do the accumulated for the probability and also expected revenue. This is what you get. A very nice way to kind of model complex situation. Right? So they just oversimplify this first. Let's just reduce complexity, unnecessary complexity. We're not modeling 150 seats on board at the beginning. Let's just model for 1 seat. Once you understand 1 seat, and try to expand that to 2 seats, then gradually you can model the reality. Enough for a lot of paper, this kind of the approach. Okay. I think then they use the approach to the simulation, like give you idea to compare. Right? So use different kind of objectives, which one maximize the potential revenue from the flight. There's a little bit kind of optimization involved. So unlike the previous papers, mostly it's statistics based. We're using regression to find out why this matters, what this factor matters, and whether it matters or not. But if you use optimization, you can kind of solve the problem how to give you a solution. That's the difference. Pretty good article, even published I think for about a few years already, so 2006. But I think that's one of the good articles published in 2006. Okay, next one. Yeah, so this is even better. This is probably, in my opinion, this is the best article for the entire semester that I can find relevant to this particular course. But no pressure, just try your best to present.
Our article was also on overbooking, but it had to do with how passengers react to either getting denied service or upgrades or downgrades. So just as an introduction, the reason they did this research is because there's not a lot of research on how passengers react. There's only monetary reactions and more like how aggressive they are rather than their behavioral. I mean, they haven't looked at how aggressive customers are when they get either downgraded, denied service, or upgrades. So the researchers use like what they call conditional difference in differences analysis to study how customers' usage on a certain airline changes based on how they are treated when it comes to overbooking. This is something that a lot of airlines and businesses in general use as a revenue management system, and they found that it increases their revenue by 2 to 5%. But in recent years, they're finding that customers are reacting more aggressively, especially through loyalty programs, which is why overbooking is looked at more seriously now than it was before. So they start off with just talking about the biases that are involved in this. They use something called a fairness theory approach, which analyzes both the positive and negative equity impacts. So from a customer perspective, they're either denied boarding, downgraded, and both of these are seen as a failure in service. But if they're upgraded, they're all seen as an over-fulfillment of the service where the customer gets more than they're paying for. So fairness theory says that people strive for justice in exchange situations and include both the outcomes obtained in fairness consideration and the inputs or investments that the exchange partners make. So there's 3 conditions that they use to judge fairness theory. One being that there's an unfavorable condition exists, so here the customer gets downgraded or denied boarding. The other party is accountable, so here the airline is accountable for overbooking. And the third one being that the harmful action must be viewed as a violation of some moral. In this case, the airline overbooking when they knew that they were going to have to adjust at some point if everyone that was on the flight shows up. So a lot of fairness theory is used in organizational and marketing research, where it seems that employees who are not treated fairly by their employer are either likely to reduce how much effort they put into their job or just quit the job and request an exchange. Same way, the airline industry, dissatisfied customers will either stop buying from that particular airline or do nothing other than complain of negative reviews and things like that. And that's how they try to get their problem solved. On the other side, on the positive side, or on the employee side, it can trigger feelings of guilt, and sometimes people believe that they're getting too much. On the airline side, here it creates customer delight, which increases satisfaction and loyalty, but that's not actually ever proven that there is a direct correlation between upgrades and loyalty. When it comes to frequent flyer programs, it's seen that a high status customer would likely perceive the same negative outcome as more critical and unfair than a base customer, which makes sense that if I would fly with the airline a lot and I get denied service, I'm probably going to see it as more unfair than someone who's flying on the airline for the first time. So based on this, the article comes up with 5 hypotheses. The first one being service failures arise from overbooking, cause customers to decrease their future spending with a service provider. Second one being firm-initiated upgrades of services cause customers to increase their spending with a service provider. for administrative upgrades of service do not affect customers' spending with the service provider. The effects of service failures that arise from overbooking of customer spending are stronger for high status customers than low status customers. And then the effects of service upgrades on customer spending are stronger for low status customers than for high status customers. So how they do this is that they took a large database of the global airline, they didn't specify what airline this was, and looked at revenue and transactions over the span of 4 years, so 3 years, 2001 to 2004. So they looked at booking class route, whether it was booked by business or privately, age, gender, how long the customer's been with the airline, number of miles they have in the frequent flyer program, and their loyalty, whether they're gold, silver, bronze, or whatever their the airline's distinction is. How they split the three, what they call treatments are involuntary denied boarding, involuntary downgrading, and upgrading. They started off with a random sample of 330,000 customers, and they got data from 556 who were downgraded, 836 that were denied boarding, and 2,282 that were upgraded. How they looked at this was when there's not enough seats in an aircraft, that's how out of the three treatments are given to a customer. The way airlines normally do this is they first look at the customer status in the loyalty program, then the amount of points they've collected within the loyalty program, and then they look at the price paid by an individual for that flight and prioritize what kind of treatment a customer is going to get depending on that. For the study, they use something called the PSM procedure, which is propensity score matching, which is where they split the treatments. They split the three different scenarios into three treatments. So they do this by first getting running a log regression to figure out the customer. That shows the top the scores before matching and the scores after matching. After that, they look at percentage reduction in bias using that formula, and then lastly, they take a small sample size of the filter, then they provide to and then other people do things.
So as we can see that the downgrading and denied boarding have a so for corporations, there so because they're not rated treatment for the different status groups. The results towards to hypothesis 1, which is this builder from overlooking customer transactions and revenues. So in contrast, none of the so customers do not act but does not affect low value customers. And from this, we also can
Now break it down, y'all!
Modest 2A.
I got Coach calling a young check was phone. I be ballin' like my brother Mo. Bum, bum, bum,
New for our
bum, bum,
effects, which is upgrading our
bum, bum,
effects on low value
bum,
customers,
bum,
and negative effects, which is denying
bum, bum,
shows
bum, bum,
So the author gives
bum, bum,
suggestion to prioritize
bum, bum,
by operating high systems.
bum, bum.
She can enhance customer database to support customer relationship manager activities.
Back when I first became owner of Mint Mobile.
I'm not sure if you guys follow the conclusion of the article now. The conclusion is that if I treat you very badly, you will never forget a long time. If I treat you very well, you forget what this is about. Right? So if like that, for example, if I fail the entire class, I'm pretty sure I'll become famous and you'll hate me for the rest of your life. But if I hit everyone A, you don't even remember my name after a couple of years. And that's what it really is about. Study published on the Journal of Marketing, if I remember correctly, that's top journal in the area of marketing. Journalist, I believe, according to my friend in business college, school of business, not here, but other universities, if you're faculty members on the tenure track appointment, you got one publication on the Journal of Marketing, you get 10 papers. So that's how difficult it is to get a paper published on this journal. And this is a classic example of a good publication. I think I want to use this to explain a little bit about research. I think you probably have heard from your statistics courses that when you want to do experiments on something, for example, the efficacy of a new medicine, so how do you prove that? It's not just that say give me new medicine, take it, maybe cure on the therapeutic effective, and all cure is not effective because there's some psychological effect. So I may feel like that I have the take the medicine, and then some kind of the positive perception makes me believe that I will cure. So that's not a good way to do this. So I think you probably remember some of the experiment design. The course would say you put people in two groups. One is the experiment group, the other one is control group. So both samples are randomly selected from the population. The random allocate, then give this one the medicine, and give them the placebo, which looks the same. And looks the same as medicine, but you don't know. But it has no impact at all. It shouldn't have any impact. Then you apply to both groups to see if this group is cured and if it's not, or if the duration of this process becomes much shorter or not. That's how we tested the efficacy of the vaccine or medicine. That's how we do. In that natural experiment, you can do that. But in the reality, in a lot of the areas, you just cannot afford to do experiments. Like that example here in this scenario. You cannot just randomly grab two groups of customers, or give them one group upgrading, the other one downgrading, or the other one did not upgrade, the other one group upgrading. You cannot afford to do that. Right? So a lot of areas there's no experiments. You cannot experiment. You can only use the existing data. So that's called the empirical research. You have to use the natural observation. That's not what you do. You need to be very creative. And one way of doing that is that they try to identify a twin of each participant. Right. So, for example, in this study, I think one more thing. The best experiment control group is that imagine the perfect world. There's so many twins you select from. Right. Twin brothers, twin sisters. You put one of the twins here, one the other one here. You do so many twins. That's perfect. It's great. Then you study whether it's medicine or it's vaccines, but you cannot find that many twins. They have to agree to participate. You have to find thousands of them, and so on. Every researcher's dream is to have that many twins. It's not possible. So we'll have to use random sample. We believe that the personal variation will average it out if your sample is large enough. Right? So if they're large enough, you kind of, you believe, right, they represent the general population. And in this study, what they did is that they want to find your twin. Right? So for people who experience these experiences, downgrading, upgrading, deny boarding, they're looking at your previous kind of or existing travel behavior, your income, whatever the data airline may have for you. They use the kind of the matching. This is a propensity score. It's a one-way matching. They can identify your twin. Right? Will have the similar shopping behavior, travel preference, airline frequent flyer status, right? Those kind of things. Find that person for each of the passenger experienced this in the last few years, maybe in that period of time. Then the so-called the treatment is this upgrading, downgrading, and deny boarding. That's the treatment. From this moment on, then we compare for people who have experienced downgrading, deny boarding, and upgrading, compared with your twin. The twin that has not experienced this, where their shopping behavior with the airline tend to differ or to remain the same. So here they use the difference in differences, that's the method. And this is the kind of the visual, the critical visual that anyone use DID, differences, DID short for that. And then you need to establish. So you first need to establish there's a so-called parallel trend. So this is, I believe, this number of trips. The number of trips took by that passenger and your twin before the treatment and after the treatment. So you see, before the treatment, it's very similar. There's a parallel trend. Before you book the higher 5 trips, 4 trips, 5 trips, 4 trips, 5 trips, to here 6.5 trips. Very similar. But that's the reason why they're selected as twins. After the treatment, one got upgraded, the other one did not get, one got denied boarding, the other one did not get denied boarding. One got downgraded, the other one did not get downgraded. And here, one got upgraded, the other one did not get upgraded. You see that the path does drift away these two, but not that one. So that means people get denied boarding tend to travel less often with this airline compared with those ones who do not get denied boarding. I would believe they should have similar shopping behavior, but somehow after treatment, they become different. Same thing for here. People got downgraded, they tend to travel less often with the airline. People who do not get upgraded, they have a different trend. This is pretty convincing evidence to suggest this downgrading and denied boarding have such a negative impact on future trips took by those two by passengers. Unfortunately, for upgrading is different. This is a positive treatment. We treat people nice, right? So we expect to see those people who are upgraded should travel more with the airline, but unfortunately that did not happen. They still have this kind of parallel trend, right? They still display very similar behavior. And so that's what this group just mentioned. Right? So if you upgrade them, yes, very nice, but still I'll do whatever I'm supposed to do. I'm not showing any kind of positive feedback to your trip. That's what this study is about. Okay. You can use this method for a lot of kind of scenario. I'm not sure, just randomly give example. Right? So here at Purdue, I'm pretty sure you use some of the matching mechanism by your twin, studying the same program. Then you just find out. You have to compare a measure. What's the measure? That's your digit. Let's say you use pretty clever. So from your first and second year study, and we use some of the characteristics to identify twin, put people in 2 groups. Then we give one group a treatment, maybe let's say use a different kind of method of instruction. We let the students to learn whatever they're interested, and also provide students with the resource. The other group will just use the traditional kind of classroom-based lecture dominated this kind of traditional instruction. Then we'll compare, let's say, the average kind of the grade point. Compare that. And to see if that treatment, right, so the different method will have a different effect on the students' kind of achievement or not. Right? So that's one way of doing that. DID, I think, is a pretty popular method. If you search using keyword DID in mostly econ journals, you have a lot of research about this. That's one way. So this is one way of building the control group artificially, right? By twin. There's another way of building the control group. Is the method is called regression discontinuity. So you find someone who is really similar. Let's say, for example, if you want to find out whether a particular policy has some effect on the spending of the local resident, so what do? The policy usually in this country is kind of state-based. State has a policy, right? So you go to the border of that state. So, for example, Indiana here, Ohio here. The policy, Indiana policy only applies to Indiana, does not apply to Ohio. So you construct this kind of, this is your experiment county, this is your control county. The people living in this county and this county, they should be very similar. The only difference that it is the separate state border. People are very similar. They travel back and forth very often. Right? So you have a new policy here. Then you want to see after a period of time whether their behavior drifts apart or not. That's another way. Right? I remember I read an article a few years ago, and it was very well managed. So the study was based in China. I think it's like, but hopefully I still remember that. So in China, the quality mission is a bit different from here. Is that you do not apply unlike here, you use your previous record or experience to apply to different universities. The university is a niche and you make a choice. In China, it's that there's a standard test, everyone takes the same test. And your grade in that test determines which university you will meet. So that's the Chinese system, which is pretty difficult to be honest, because you only have to be honest, only one chance. Your grade determines everything. So then it's like so we pick a cutoff. So for example, the student who achieve 600. So in theory, they're probably let's say they go to good schools. So for people who receive 199, because cutoff here is between 600 and 599, this student only go to not so great but okay universities. Okay, this is top. This is okay. So if you say someone who scored a 650 and someone scored 500, obviously in terms of their capability, aptitude, that's a huge difference. But what if the student who achieved or scored 599 to the student who scored 600? I don't think there's much difference. 1 point, it's just luck. Right? So in terms of the aptitude, they should be almost identical. But now the education opportunity really apply. These students go to top school. These students go to vocational school. A few years later, you compare their, let's say, average income, huge difference. Right? So maybe these people that use US dollar, average income of this group of students is, let's say, 100K a year. Here is 80K. The difference of this is 20,000. So that's the price of 1 point. Right. To say whether this is kind of fair or not. Right. It's really the opportunity that causes the difference. It's not because I think this is a pretty kind of convincing evidence. That's another one. So this method is called RDD. You can use RDD on a lot of scale, as here on the scores and on the previous example in the state or national order. So you can use that. So this is some of the useful methods I think invented by the economists in the last 20, 30 years. And they're much better than just purely regression. So I think that's the method you really need to learn if you can. Now here, this is the finding. To be honest, the finding is just too good. The finding is almost perfect. The more I look at the findings, I become just suspicious. It's just too good to be true. Why? First of all, deny boarding, downgrading, and upgrading. So I think previously explained that upgrading has no effect, downgrading and deny boarding have negative effects on future behavior. And the folder divide the groups by their frequent flyer status: gold, silver, and bronze member. So here you see that bronze member, the effect on bronze number in terms of the downgrading and deny boarding is not significant. Stars here might be significant. So that means if you're the basic number of a frequent flyer program, you got downgrade, you got deny boarding, no impact. That's kind of expected. I'm the bottom of the chain. You don't treat me well, okay, so what? I still take it. But if I'm on top of this kind of this system, I'm gold number, expect everyone treat me very well. You dare treat me poorly, I'm not coming back. So the effect is stronger on the top tier members, mildly stronger on the middle members, and not even significant on the bottom of the tier members. And opposite is true for this upgrading as well. On the bottom of the chain, I got upgraded. Wow, that's really surprising. I'm coming back. I'm going to fly more often with the airline in the future. But I'm silver and gold. Everything is expected. You should hand me those kind of nice treatment. You upgraded me so well. Okay. So that's what we're going to say. So good, too good. To be honest, when I first read this article, yeah, I liked it, but I think because it's so good, I think the better way of presenting the study required by a lot of journals nowadays is that, okay, just attach your raw data to your article, to your manuscript. Put the data, make it valuable. If you identify anyone, not link your data to any individual answers. Put your data there and let other researchers test it. I'm not saying this is probably great, this is good, but there are unfortunately kind of the circumstances where people manipulate the data on the findings just to prove their point. This one is just so good. Let's say everything is all right. We believe that it actually tells industry a very important lesson. You just cannot afford to do things poorly or incorrectly. You expect to do things right. That's what this is having. Okay, so hopefully, I think after the group and also after my explanation, you got an idea of this. If you want to read it again, I think the article is also was very well drafted. Part B. That's the method. So differences, a very powerful method. We recently submitted our articles or journal. We use this method. So we use the data from airline. See if airline promotion has any effect on different travelers.
All right, so we looked over, actually was the flight that we talked about earlier. So be careful, so we have a United flight, 34. So it kind of goes to the background, which is kind of funny, I guess, I don't know. The background on social media and the rise of social media. Basically, the reason why he gave so much background on specifically Twitter was because that's where eventually the data was pulled. We can kind of go over this in a couple slides, but we kind of stress the importance of social media having no limits. As most of us know, something goes viral very quick. And something across the world can get to you, obviously, in seconds. And how does that relate to this? So eventually what we'll get into is tying this into overbooking crisis management between a viral video that kind of surfaced through Twitter, and then kind of doing an analytical breakdown of how did United Airlines kind of react to that. So this background is on crisis management. So the article defines crisis management as the collection, processing, and dissemination of information required to address a crisis. The reason why this is starting to become more and more prominent is because crisis management, specifically with overbooking, typically it would just be kind of contained within maybe your family or your group of friends. Hey, United, I had to get bumped on United and I missed an important. If you tell your friends that word travels pretty slow in comparison to what Twitter could do. On the right is just kind of an example of just a random user talking about a negative experience with United. And it was, they noted how quick that it was, that it already had, you know, almost 1,000 retweets, almost 2,500 likes. Then going on from there, kind of introducing, we talked about this a little bit earlier. So it was United Airlines Express Flight 3411. It was in 2017. It was booked to its capacity. 4 crew members needed a seat, yet there were unfortunately no volunteers. As a result, this gentleman was pretty much dragged off the plane, and security was called. He was taken off, and I think there was 2 or 3 videos that I kind of looked up on my own from different angles, which I feel like is pretty common nowadays with anything that goes viral, especially on an aircraft. You know, you have 100 people and basically a tube. I feel like everyone's either on their phone or listening to music, right? So, and another important aspect of this, why this researcher chose Twitter as their form of, you know, as their sample space, was number one, just the large amount of tweets per day. So I found a little graphic on the right. I wasn't sure when this was updated. Obviously, it's still Twitter, so I guess not as recent, since it's not X. But 500 million tweets a day, 20.8 million tweets per hour, which to me is just a crazy amount of data being sent through. Number 2 is just allows for the capturing of social surplus for research. So when we get into the amount of data that this researcher is able to collect, to me it's pretty astounding how much data he actually had to work with because of Twitter. And then therefore, the researcher noticed too that Twitter, since kind of using its capabilities and flipping it back, they noticed that airlines actually can use Twitter. I mean, pretty much every company nowadays has a Twitter. And they can actually respond quicker to events and kind of control that and improve their crisis management. And then lastly, the video went viral on Twitter. That was one of those things that you just mentioned. If it went viral on Twitter, then that should have been the medium of data collection. So we talked about overbooking quite a bit today. So I'll kind of briefly go through this. So it was like the utilization of dynamic fare management model. It's obviously a common strategy to avoid passenger no-shows. This article kind of went in depth on how it actually, they say that both the airline and the customers benefit, where the airlines are actually able to fill those seats, as we mentioned, and then the customers benefit from cheaper seats. One of the most important part of this slide is basically understanding a company's image and how overbooking has kind of matured. It's like how I mentioned how fast things move in social media. And a bad negative overbooking experience can travel way faster now than it could decades ago. That's where that crisis management again comes back in. So we have 2 data sets. We have a crisis data set and a political data set. The crisis data set is referring to the public or Twitter. There's a total of 55,083 tweets, and this was done in a span of 24 hours after the incident went viral. The terms of viral wasn't specified within the actual research article, but it's probably safe to assume that we were still within about a 30-hour window of the event occurring. What the researcher did here was actually break it down